Lindsay, as you know, on our previous platform on the weekend shows, we'd often have a topic that we would kind of talk about, and there'd be a key word in there, and I would do the etymology of that word, and we would kind
Yep.
of break the word down and go into detail. So you can
And I
imagine.
would feel dumber every time.
Oh no, you'd end up making all kind of great callback jokes throughout the course of the show relating to
Okay.
a lot of the references in the word. I felt like I was. This was almost like giving somebody who loves puns one of those great thousand book of puns books. When I got my hands on Friends with Words and Adventures in Languageland by Martha Barnette. Oh my God, terrific! The pun.
This is up both of our alleys for very different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, exactly. But it actually, as I was reading it too, it really ties into what you're doing on We Should Write,
100%.
because so much of
100%.
this is not just about aren't words cool, but aren't words things to fall in love with, aren't words passionate, aren't words things we play with. You know, we talk about the idea of play all the time. There is so much of a sense of play that kind of plays through Martha Barnett's book here. By the way, Martha is a popular radio and podcast co-host of A Way with Words. During her 2 decades on the show, she has seen that people of all stripes are curious about etymology. They revel in slang, are surprised by regional vocabulary, delight in idioms, and eager to share that weird phrase Grandma always used to say. Matter of fact, I'm a big fan of. I want to bring back all the kind of 30s and 40s talk. I was watching Casablanca. I want to bring back all that stuff. She's a longtime journalist, dynamic public speaker, and co-host of the popular radio show, as I told you, A Way with Words. She's got an undergrad degree from Vassar College, did graduate work in classical languages at the University of Kentucky. Are you surprised? I'm not. And studied Spanish in Costa Rica. She is an author of A Garden of Words, Ladyfingers and Nuns' Tummies, and Dog Days and Dandelions. And currently, I don't know why she got up so early to join us, but she resides in San Diego, California, on the other side of Los Angeles from where my wife and I live, Lindsay. It is our pleasure to welcome Martha Barnette to the show. Good morning.
Thanks Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me. You're speaking my language, fellow word nerds.
Word nerds. Word
Word
nerds.
nerd.
Well, Martha, I mean, Jim he is my like morning toilet paper word of the day guy because he's the smartest person I know. And I have a show that we've launched on this platform called We Should Write. I'm a songwriter. So it's about the healing power of writing. So between us, you've got two people who are like on both sides of the spectrum for what you're doing. And I just think it's beautiful what you dive into. But I want to start here by asking you, well, first of all, I love that basically what you're doing on your podcast, you're having conversations about conversations, I feel like, which is really cool because we say on this show, this isn't an interview, it's a conversation. And so to me, talking deeply with someone is the greatest joy in my life. I have zero patience for small talk anymore. If you're
How
going to
is
do
the
small
weather?
talk,
How's the weather over there, Lindsay?
I've already stopped listening to you. Like if anybody asks me something small, I've already stopped listening. But is that really? So my question here, with all that being said, is knowing that you're so deeply invested in the words and what they mean. Are you consciously thinking about what you're saying when you're talking? Like, what did that word mean I just said? Are you able to just intrinsically let it flow at this point? If that makes sense.
Wow, what a great question. I'm kind of operating on two tracks, I guess, because I mean, I love talking to people about the way they talk. I'm going to borrow your expression, conversations about conversations, because that's exactly what we do on A Way with Words. I love hearing people express themselves, but yeah, there's this other track in my mind where I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm also thinking about all the poetry that's fossilized in a single word. You know, Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Language is fossil poetry." And
Mm.
so many of these words. You were talking about word origins, and so many of these words have poetry or just jokes even fossilized inside of them, and so I'm consciously thinking about that as well. Sometimes it's a little bit distracting, but I do try to stay present.
It's like the word psychologist, Jim. It's like, can a psychologist ever have a real conversation, or are you judging my brain? It's like, is she judging my words? But in a good way, in a
Well,
good way, of course.
well, and see, you say psychologist, and of course, I'm going all the way back to the ancient Greek word that gave us psychologist, which is the Greek word psyche, which gave us the word like psyche and psychologist. And what's really cool is that in ancient Greek, the word psyche, psyche, it could mean spirit, but it could also mean butterfly. How gorgeous is that?
What?
Yes.
Wow, I love
Yeah,
that.
little spirit fluttering around. Isn't that gorgeous? See,
That's awesome.
this welcome to my brain. I hope you like it.
No, I love it, by the way. And before I actually get to a couple of details from the book, and by the way, spoiler alert, guys, I'm going to give away how the book ends. One of my favorite words in the English language is actually in the last chapter. And I went, oh my God, I feel like this book has been written specifically for me.
What's the word?
It was.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you so much. It just, the idea of that, the whispering, the serration is just so wonderful because it's not onomatopoetic, but it kind of is. But one of my favorite things so if you read the gospel story about the prodigal son, there's a moment where it says the father runs madly from the house to embrace the son. He sees him coming, and there is no word that they can translate it with. Meaning that they have never really quite figured out what word to use for the madly. It's like wildly with deep passion. There is no word for the original Greek that is there. And I just think that is absolute, that the idea of being Scarlett O'Hara and Melody watching, Ashley come down the road and racing for him, it's wild abandon. And the Greeks had a word for it and we don't. And I always kind of love the fact that, that English is always kind of like, well, we don't have a word for that. Let's make one. And I just love the energy that plays through the book of people taking bits and pieces of other things and kind of saying like, well, if I combine this with that, because we were talking about Schadenfreude yesterday, and Lindsay and I were making the point that we're saying that taking joy in the joy of others should be called Santa Freud in honor of Santa himself. But I wanted to ask, as you wrote this book, because it's not just a delight in words, it's partially a memoir of the construction of a delight of words as well. And I kind of want to talk about the idea of that balance that Lindsay's always talking about people are trying to achieve. How do you make sure that you're writing the story of your love affair with words while at the same time still making enough room to go through some really cool things about words? Are you following me?
Yeah, what a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. Well, I just felt like the books about language that I've really liked always have an element of memoir in them. There's a wonderful book called Word by Word by Corey Stamper, who's a lexicographer. She writes dictionaries for a living, and what made it really interesting was that she did share her own story. And language is just so personal for all of us. If you hear a new word that you've never heard before, you start to wonder about it. And I guess I couldn't. The books I really like about language share personal stories, and I just I realized that there are a lot of stories that I hadn't shared on the air. That I don't know. We're part of this bigger story. That's such a good question.
Well, and this kind of goes back to Jim's point on like the prodigal son. Like, there's no word for that feeling, that what was happening in the moment, and it leads me to wonder: do you think the words come first, or the feeling comes first? Like, I'm just curious if is the emotion behind the words or the other? Because does language shape feeling, or do we shape language through what we feel? Is that a chicken before the egg kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of both, and I'm making a note right here to look at the story of the prodigal son to find out what the Greek word is translated as madly. That fascinates me. But does the feeling come first? Well, what's interesting about language is that we're always trying to make sense of the world. All this sensory information that's coming at us all the time because of the way that we take in the information that surrounds us every day. I mean, it's kind of bewildering unless you break it down into manageable pieces. And different people speaking different languages have tried different ways to do that, and that's one of the things that really makes me feel connected to other people. When you realize that they've confronted, say, a feeling, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I describe that? How do I, one of the most interesting calls we ever got on the show was from a fellow who had just left the military, and he was looking for a word that was exactly between utter euphoria, just absolutely thrilled, euphoric, and abject depression. He was struggling with some feelings that he had while serving in the Army, and it was so interesting because that call, more than any other call we ever had on the show, prompted the most responses from people, and I think it's because people were trying to, put that feeling in a box, trying to draw a line around it and define it. And I mean, isn't that interesting? I mean, what would you say for halfway between depression and euphoria?
I mean, that's fascinating. I always talk about the hashtag balance, or that the juxtaposition of the two. I mean, honestly, the first word that comes to mind is content or settling. Neither of those are right,
Well,
because
no.
it's
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. It's like, Edwin O'Connor wrote a novel called The Edge of Sadness, where he actually takes about 3 or 4 paragraphs to actually explain that feeling. The idea that, that sense of,
it's like it's almost like it's like I know what it could be, and I know what I'm not. Like I know what I want to be, and I know what I'm not fully, but I feel closer to this, but I want that. It's like that. I don't know. It's like that for me. It'd be that moment of like I can it's choose your own adventure right here, because I think about this on a daily basis when I'm in a bad mood or a good, like something's really gnawing at me. I'm like, this is on me now. I can lean left or I can lean right. Which way do I want to look? So maybe it's like,
Right.
maybe there's not a word for the in between. It's just, do you want to look left or look right? I don't know if that's
Right.
a little more. I maybe need to go to therapy to dive into that.
well,
But
and by the
But
way, go ahead, please, Martha, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and if you had a word for that, what would that do for you? How would you how would you feel?
it might
Would it
make it worse. It might make, because then now I've
Oh,
labeled it something
interesting.
as opposed to chasing it. You know what I mean? Or chasing. I don't know. I think
Well,
once we
maybe it's a
label
good
something,
thing.
we're stuck in it.
Boy, that's really interesting. What were you going to say, Jim?
The thing for me is that if you go back to a show like Rectified, if you go to the end of the movie Bull Durham, if you look at O'Connor's Edge of Sadness, I think one of the reasons why it actually causes an immense struggle for people is that it is the stuff that monologues are made of. The idea that
Yeah.
I think that search for a word is because I think that it often creates the most kind of amazing moments in movies. Kevin Costner at the end on the porch in Bull Durham, grieving over the life that he could have had while having expectations of the thrilling life that he could. The idea, there's a line from the movie show Rectified where he says, "A lot of people have done me wrong over my life, but more people have done right by me, and that's what I'm going to hang on to." And
Oh my
all
gosh, that's
Mm,
it, Jim. It's like monologues. When you don't have a word, you give a monologue.
it's
Monologue
exactly
is
it.
the search for the word.
Well,
That's
exactly. That's
while
what
the audience
mm.
figures it out. That's actually
Wow, yeah.
brilliant.
and that's what an ellipses is. Ellipses is the breakdown of the word. I'm looking for the next word. I know that I can, if I get to the next word, that word will be the word, and I keep on searching. I think you're onto something there. Really is groovy
Hmm.
stuff. Really groovy stuff. Can I share really quickly something from the book to give people a sense of how wonderful this
Yeah.
is? Um, the English adjective lupine means wolf-like or ruthlessly predatory, from Latin lupus or wolf. The flower called lupine is so named because it thrives in poor soil, giving the impression that it wolfs nutrients from the earth. Actually, the opposite is true. Lupine is a nitrogen-fixing plant, meaning that it enhances the soil by converting nitrogen into a form that other plants can use. And all I could think about after I read that thing, Martha, was that's the story of the werewolf. Everybody thinks he's a bad guy, and it turns out, just like Sirius Black and just like so many werewolves in the movies, he's the one that jumps out of the woods and stops the vampire from killing us. And I don't know why, but the
Wow.
book constantly makes you think in those ways because it keeps taking you both away from the word and back to it. Sorry, I got excited. I
Mm.
just wanted to kind of play with that. But you really play in the book, don't you? The idea is to play and have a good time with words. This is about being an intellectual kid to some degree. Fair?
in a candy store, yes, in a verbal candy store, because language is all around us, and all these stories tucked inside words, like that's a great example. Lupine, from the Latin for wolf, and that's why we named that disease lupus, because it's so wolf-like in the way that it attacks the body. So yeah, it's like sort of like being a kid in a candy store, I guess.
Okay, I've got here's a random thought. Shocking.
Random thought of the day.
Thank you. I want to talk about wedding vows and meaningful language, wedding vows as it pertains to words. What is your take, Martha, on wedding vows as they pertain to words? Should we write our own? And there's no should in your opinion, but should we write our own, or do the traditional words for wedding vows still hold up? Or I know for some guys, of course, it's a cop out where they're like, "Hey, I really believe what these say." I'm like, "Do you even know what it means anymore?" But I'm trying. I don't know if you're married or not, or how you would position that. But I think because I got married 18 years ago, and I thought about it long and hard. I'm like, do I use these words? Do I know what these words mean? Did these words mean anything to me, or do I write my own? We ended up saying the wedding vows. I mean, I'm a songwriter, and I think I got overwhelmed when I thought, oh, I could write my own. I'm like, oh, I could be on stage, quote unquote, a long time if I write my own. But I'm curious your take on those words, if they hold up, and if anybody really feels what they mean anymore as we transition over the years.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, you could argue on the one hand that those words have sort of been drained of meaning, because you say a word or a phrase over and over and over again, and linguists call that semantic satiation, where you just say a word so many times it becomes meaningless to you. But at the same time, I think there's comfort and structure, and I mean, there's a reason that we have cliches, because even though they're cliches, they're expressing a truth. And I think probably the same thing is true of wedding vows. I mean, I've known people who've struggled, maybe they don't have a religious background, and they can't figure out how to marry, so to speak, their two world views, and it's not until they get some kind of officiant in between them who maybe has a tradition of some kind of tradition of either doing weddings without a religious component or with one. I don't know. I mean, I always find that moment when the groom pulls out a piece of paper and unfolds it and starts to read. There is that moment for everybody else where you're like, oh wow, what's he gonna say? And sometimes they're funny, and sometimes they make you cry. I think, I mean, you said choose your own adventure earlier, and maybe that's what I would say either one of those things is perfectly fine. Whatever gets the job done.
Yeah, well, certainly throw out the to honor or to the vibes of bowing, to obey. Like, screw that, throw that out the window. The other one, like in sickness and in health. My husband got really sick. He was fine. I'm not sick. Like, he got hurt right after we got married and was in the hospital. I was like, dude, too soon for in sickness and in health. Like, too soon, brother. I should have changed that up. No, but it's an interesting take. So thank you.
Yeah. What about the richer part?
Yeah, let's go with that one. For richer and richer.
Yeah, yeah. How about that? For richer in perpetuity throughout the universe. One of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about it from your standpoint is sometimes we just like the way words sound. There's a Wallace Stevens poem called "The Emperor of Ice Cream," and I just love when he says, "In kitchen cups of concupiscent curds," and concupiscent curds.
Is that coffee?
No, actually, it's really menacing. When you actually figure out what the poem is about, it is really, really menacing, because the Emperor of Ice Cream, in fact, is death. It's an undertaker that's coming for us all.
Okay.
What is it? They say, call the roller of big cigars, the muscular one, and let him whip in kitchen cups of concupiscent curds. And what it is the guy is standing there whipping embalming fluids for a body that lies upon the table. But,
Lord.
Whoa. Pretty cool stuff, huh? what I was kind of curious about is, have there been words that you have fallen in love with because of the way they sound and the way they feel, and then figured out the meaning? Like, I don't want any part of that. I don't want that. I don't want that anywhere near me. And I don't know if that makes any sense. But words that actually, I mean, you love words, but you love these words because they kind of make you kind of cringe, make you feel kind of uneasy.
I'm trying to think of a word that makes me feel uneasy. Well, I mean, there is the notorious one that people bring up all the time that starts with an M and ends with a T. I don't.
Oh my God, it's Lindsay's word. It's Lindsay's word. It's the word that she read. Oh my God,
Moist.
It's moist. Oh my God.
It's the worst.
You said it. This is.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I don't know why, but it is.
What do they call that when they, expose you to whatever you're phobic about?
Aversion therapy.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's strange. Like
managed.
my friend here but my friend who's staying with us and helping do some work on our house right now. The word Band-Aid makes him lose his mind. Like it's because it's the strangest. I mean, like it's and I know him very well. He's not a dramatic person. If I say Band-Aid, he like falls down into a fetal position. It is the weirdest thing.
I know why, Martha. I can tell you why, because I know when you say the word Band-Aid, he can picture that Band-Aid and it's moist.
It's bloody and moist. Yeah. Ew. So gross.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
That's
weird.
A new one on me. Did you talk to him about, like, did he have some weird association with some kind of owie when he was a little kid, or that's wild.
I'll dive in and ask him more because we certainly want to have you back. You're my new favorite person. But I'll find out more. I just thought he was weird and I moved on with my life. But I should have asked him more questions. I should have asked him more. I should have said more words.
I'm gonna try that. If I ever get into a scary situation, I'll just yell Band-Aid and see what happens.
One of the other thing is the fact that you talked about this as well in the book, and you talked about it earlier on in this interview. The idea that and I love the concept of my own thought is that all words are a seance, meaning that when we use them, we're actually summoning the spirit of all the words that have ever gone into making that word into reality. And I realized after reading certain sections of the book that the Greek gods may not walk among us, but they certainly are on our lips, are they not? And that's a really cool thing about how stuff that far back from Roman and from Greek times makes its way into our lexicon. And there are words that you can track that are 2,000, 3,000 years old, right? We are speaking dead languages and bringing them back to life.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, starting with January. January comes from the name of the Roman god Janus, who was the god of doorways and beginnings, and that's why the beginning month of the year is named after this Roman god Janus. So his name is in our mouth a lot, and it's also really, I said he was the god of doorways, and that gave us a Latin word that eventually ended up in English as janitor, the guy or woman who manages the doors in a building, and then later the whole building. I mean, as you said, it's like a long history within that one word, and words can kind of change their meaning and be adapted to different situations. But that's a great. I mean, there's so many of those in English. The word echo, goes back to a nymph named Echo who could only repeat back to people what they had said. There's a lot of those.
And you've talked a bit about like language and empathy. I guess you write about being curious, not furious, when someone uses English in a way that you're not used to, which is me. Sometimes and I ask Jim sometimes, I'm like, please tell me if I'm using a word incorrectly, because I'll know what I'm wanting to say. Like I've mixed up, what was it? Brevity and levity, I think, Jim?
Brevity and levity was your mix up. Yeah.
Yeah, I would mix up brevity and levity. And I feel that, I feel like having that mindset of, as you said, curious, not furious, could heal more than just language barriers and make people not feel so nervous to speak out or say the thing. I'd rather say the thing wrong than not say it at all. You know what I mean? And so I'm just curious your take on that when people like maybe to give some people permission to, because people say supposedly, and it makes that's just a wrong word. That's a little bit different.
It's a
but
5-year-old word. It's a 5-year-old word, which makes
Yeah.
it kind of magnificent. You're like, oh my God, you're reverting back to childhood. You're speaking like a
supposedly and frustrated. I have a friend that says frustrated, and I want to, and he's a very smart person, and I'm like, at what point do I tell him he's saying it wrong, or has he just accepted it? But anyway, just if you could, we just have a couple minutes left, but I'd love for you to speak on that and give people some permission to say it wrong, and so they can, curious, so they can learn more.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you raise a great point about curious when uses an expression that is unfamiliar to you, because there may well be good historical reasons for that. One of my favorite examples of that is the expression needs washed. That the car needs washed or the cat needs let out. I mean, some people say, oh, that's not grammatically correct. Well, hello, if you're from Ohio or Western Pennsylvania, Indiana, you probably say the cat needs let out of the door, out of the house, and that's because of Scots-Irish migration patterns. In Scotland and Ireland, you will hear that grammatical construction rather than the car needs to be washed. And I would say that probably once a month we get an email at A Way with Words where somebody says, I have a new coworker who just moved here, and he says the car needs washed, and that's wrong, isn't it? Well, it's a feature of dialect. What I love about it is it's one of those cool fossils, because that usage follows the patterns of Scots and Irish immigrants moving through the United States. So, I mean, to me, that's thrilling. That's not something to be furious about.
We're out of time, by the way, Lindsay, and my heart is a little
Aw.
bit broken, by the way. And as a resident
Me
and
too.
a native of the city of New Orleans, I will never question anybody. After all, we say making groceries, how's your mama and them, and it would take me forever to explain the Brooklynese we
Sure.
speak down here. By the way, I wanted to let you know, Martha, we've had hundreds of guests on. I'm not kidding. Since the 8 weeks we've been on the air, you are the first guest booked for Road Gang Radio. When Claire Marie sat down to book guests, we got you on a later date, but you are the first guest that was booked, period, on Road Gang Radio, and we're so thrilled that you could make an appearance with us. Where can people find out more about you?
Wow. Well, I'm honored. You can find our show, Away with Words, at waywardradio.org, or just look for us wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find me at marthabarnette.com, and that is Martha Barnette with an E on the end, because my Aunt Mazo, when the family moved from the log cabin in Appalachia to the town, she thought that would look more sophisticated if Barnett had an E on the end. So that's
Oh,
why that's marthabarnette.com.
She,
fancy aunt. Check it out in the book, Friends with Words, Adventures in Languageland. Jim, this is your book is my new morning toilet paper. That sounds weird, but I mean it.
yeah, she means it. She means it. Thank you, Martha, so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
It's a good thing.
Absolutely.
It's a good
Thank
thing.
you. Martha, thanks. You welcome back anytime. Please tell us you'll come back. We're going to put you on the spot. You'll come back, right?
I would love that. What a great conversation.